All right, thank you everyone. My name is Lisa Hamilton. I'm from Water New South Wales. I'm the Water Quality Programs Manager at Water New South Wales, and I'm going to talk to you about our scientific research priorities. So my presentation is going to be a bit different. There's going to be no equations. The most complex graph is going to be a pie graph. So just a high-level presentation of what scientific research we're doing at Water New South Wales and how we've come about putting together our program and coming up with our priorities. So for those of you who haven't heard a lot about Water New South Wales, we are the state's bulk water provider. So essentially our job is to capture, store and release water and send it to customers across New South Wales. Those customers may be towns, irrigators, and of course we've got major water utilities like Sydney Water Corporation that we supply raw water to. Now, one of the things with that, it means that we might be the operator, but the rules are set by DPI. So that's one of the complexities within New South Wales is DPI sets the rules about how much water can be traded, and we then have to deliver that. As part of that, we also undertake the water quantity and in some instances quality monitoring across New South Wales for that purpose. And we also provide that data to DPI. It's said that we have the largest, we own and operate the largest surface and groundwater monitoring network within the Southern Hemisphere. So that sounds like a lot of data, but as some of the researchers in this audience know, there's still a lot of gaps and uncertainty within that data set. Part of the unusual responsibility Water New South Wales has is around declared catchment areas. Now, while I say our responsibility is really just about transferring that water to customers as they've requested it and their license allows them to ask for, we also have special function in declared catchment areas, and there's only one at the moment that's been specified, and that's the Greater Sydney Supply Catchment. So within that function, we then have a responsibility around catchment management and protection of water quality. And that's where my program sits in, is that we then have some funding specifically to undertake research into catchments for the protection of water quality, particularly in regards to those declared catchment areas. So in about 2019, 2020, we were finishing up 5-year round of our science program, and we did some consultation with the business to come up with the priorities for the next 5 years. So one of the things the business wanted to do was us to focus our internal resources on priority areas, collaborate with others on non-priority areas, but also in areas where we don't have enough inherent expertise with in-house. And to build a reputation for areas we decide to have specific knowledge within the organisation. So we did a lot of workshops with our stakeholders and customers, mostly our internal ones within Water New South Wales business, but also with some of our external customers and agencies we work with. And we came up with a list of needs, and through that we were able to develop a couple of key themes of research, one around catchment resilience and one around integrated water management. However, we acknowledge that in a changing environment and a changing world, priorities change. And so we also have a program of work called Risk and Opportunities, which gives us an agility function to address problems as they come up. We spend a bit of time in coming up with our strategy and our communication, and there's a lot of formal project management required to deliver our projects. So we have a bit of a theme going there about how we manage that. And we also provide a function of science advice for the business, where there are some fairly unique skill sets within my team. Most of them have PhDs or either have them or are completing them at the moment, and therefore they have some specialised skills that may not be available in other parts of the business, and we can jump in where needed and give some particular advice without it being a full-blown research project. So just going to go through the science priorities now that we came up with. Catchment resilience, I guess we kind of came up with a bit of a goal statement for that. And for that, it's that Water New South Wales understands how catchment health and water quality work together to ensure safe drinking water supply. That we have the knowledge, to best manage and protect the catchments in a changing climate. And again, remember that our focus is really on that responsibility we have around catchment management and water quality in declared catchment areas, currently being the Sydney supply area. So within that, there's a few needs that have been grouped together as key goals for that program. Our first goal is to review and develop Water New South Wales specific catchment health indicators and to understand how the catchment is changing under different climate and anthropogenic pressures. So there's a lot of data out there, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of processes. What we want to try and do is capture a way that we can turn that into insights for our business so that they can run programs of management, change the way we operate to enhance our protection of the catchment and to sort of shore up the ongoing security of that water supply. This is a complex process, but we're starting to work towards coming out with a catchment outlook report, and that research is just kicking off to collate those data sets and build those insights. The second goal is kind of related to that and kind of touches on some of the things Nandini talked about with decisions people make and the uncertainty about what trajectory different things are on. We kind of want to have a step back and say, well, what is the catchment health's future state likely to be? What are all these changes going on in the world and the mega trends and the micro trends and the climate change, and how do we downscale them to understanding some of the future pressures to our catchment that maybe we're not quite looking at yet because they're not totally on the horizon. So that way, when we're doing our catchment outlook report, when we're looking at trends and insights, we're actually looking at those ones that may be a future risk as well as the ones that we currently are aware of. Our third goal is to understand the impacts of wildfire on water quality and what we can do to protect our water supplies better from the impacts of wildfire. And this, when we were doing the consultation for our science program, it was quite timely because we had quite a significant fire around Lake Burragarang, one of the biggest water supply storages we have for Greater Sydney. And that brought out a lot of needs from our business about, well, why we know what to do, our requirements are as a landholder. A lot of the best practice comes around protecting life and property, but what can we understand better to protect water quality? Another one is to understand the impacts of extended drought on catchment health and water quality. And as we see, we've sort of been going through a pattern of extended drought and some really heavy rainfalls. And this is really playing havoc with water quality, that it settles right down during drought. There are some certain problems that do come up, but then the extreme rainfall is really changing the water quality very rapidly and causing lots of problems for the treatment that has sort of got used to this more stable environment. And for us to understand those impacts and the cyclic nature of that will help us manage our customer Sydney Water's expectation of what they need to do to be prepared for those changes, and whether there's any mitigation we can do. The fifth goal is understanding the impacts of mining on catchment health and water quality. There's longwall coal mining active in our metropolitan catchments, and they're causing subsidence and fracturing, which can lead to water losses, and also that exposure of rock faces can also lead to increased mineralisation of certain metals. Our second priority is integrated water management, and what we want to understand is how environmental and supply changes will impact water quality and quantity, and that we're committed to enhance water quantity without compromising water quality in our declared catchment area. So there's lots of things we already do about water transfers from one lake to another, but there's also more and more conversations now about, well, more climate independent supplies. So they may involve our lakes as reservoirs of desalination banking or recycled water, indirect potable reuse. And we just want to be prepared for that, to understand how that's going to play out in terms of us protecting the water quality long term. So the specific goals there are understand the relationship between lake ecology and water quality and the impact of those supply security strategies that I mentioned. The second goal is that Water New South Wales, in quite a separate process, is developing a water quality model for the catchment. So it's coupling a hydrological model to a hydrodynamic model to come up with a full catchment to customer supply water quality model. And within that, they're finding some data gaps where we need a bit more information and understanding on some of the processes they're trying to model. But also there's a great opportunity to use data science methods to fill those gaps around some of the processes that can't be easily modeled in that kind of deterministic model approach. And we're working on with researchers on those kind of aspects, as particularly DARE is a good example of that. The third and fourth goals relate to cyanobacteria, because it is a risk that cyanobacteria can produce toxins that make them a problem for drinking water. But we also manage a few recreational sites, both within the declared catchment and across the state. So there's a bit of leverage there of our research for protecting drinking water supply for Greater Sydney to across the whole of the state, to understand why does cyanobacteria bloom, what's the dominant strain, why they sometimes become toxic. Even at a fundamental state, we don't understand why they produce toxins. So some of the fundamental research still needs to be made, but also can we, even without that fundamental understanding, can we better predict algal blooms and understand the risk factors and mitigation factors so that we don't have toxic cyanobacteria blooms, we don't have deoxygenation events that are cyanobacteria mediated. And with that, we want to improve the efficiency of cyanobacteria monitoring. Classical monitoring technology is take a water sample, send it to the lab, get someone to look at it under a microscope and count all the cyanobacteria and algal species there and send it back in a report. So it's quite labor intensive, but there's a lot of great techniques out there. And how can we utilize those techniques to optimize our understanding of what's happening in the system and also get faster feedbacks to our water quality analysts who can then make decisions based on that. So at the moment where we stand is that we've currently developed 3 strategic research plans. And this is really to capture those more complex needs of some of those goals and to target make sure our projects are targeted to the business needs and the questions that they're asking. So we've got one around fire, one around mining impacts, and one around cyanobacteria. Currently, our research program consists of 37 active projects. Most of them, well, probably a bit over half are run externally through collaborations like this, and another 16 of them are run internally. So we find that we have some very niche needs or very applied needs, and so therefore it'll be run by one of the researchers within my team to actually do that work, gather that data and create those insights for the business. Generally, it's fairly even balance of projects between our 2 themes and also our risks and opportunities theme. So working with us, the way we work is that, like I said, we have our internal projects where some of the researchers in my team are doing it themselves, but we also have a fair bit of collaboration. We work with Water Research Australia a lot because they're the peak water utility industry body who organise collaborative research. We also go through with ARC linkages, and this is our first ITTC program. So we support those kind of research leveraging opportunities. There are PhD scholarships that we've helped set up within, we've got 2 water array scholarships at the moment, and we're looking to expand into other opportunities for PhD scholarships. We collaborate on multi-partner collaborations with other New South Wales water agencies, particularly Sydney Water. We've got a lot of collaborations with them. We will give direct research contracts for something that's really tailored to our needs. So work directly with the university on a project and pay them through research contract arrangements. We have 2 graduates within my team. It's a little bit different to a classic graduate program because they're research graduates, so they both have PhDs, but that program is a 2-year program where they come and spend some time with the business, learn about different things within our business, and then do some research with our team. We also will support internships from time to time. So what about data science? If you haven't picked up opportunities along the way, well, there's plenty of opportunities within our program to use data science methods and collaborate through DARE. we've got a wealth of water quality data, relatively speaking. I know every time we share our data with people, even our most well-monitored sites, they might say there's lots of data gaps, there's lots of uncertainty, but we have a fairly extensive monitoring network for a water utility. There's opportunities to work on predictive algorithms for water quality. We're looking at exploring basic machine learning algorithms for predicting water quality for key treatability analytes. And at the moment, there's also very complex environmental processes and trends we're trying to understand around catchment health, mining impacts, fire behaviour. And there's really interesting data sets out there that utilise more than just classic data sets. We also, as I said earlier, we're trying to support the augmentation of the water quality hydrological and hydrodynamic models. So they're quite keen to have comparative methods that are data-driven, and as well as use tools for transferring some of their modelled outputs into things that they can't model. So in that example, I've got a few examples here. We've done a UTS iLab student project around a prototype of a machine learning algorithm to predict water colour, which is a key treatability aspects of water quality from the modelled outputs. So we've given them actual real data of water quality and said, can they predict what the colour will be, and that will allow that to also then fit into the model outputs. We're working through Water ROA, we're working with SecWater and Griffith University partnership with a number of other utilities on how do we integrate quantitative microbial risk assessment into hydrodynamic models. We've got a partnership with Sydney Water. They're working with one of their build, own, operate treatment plant operators, Trility and UTS, and Melbourne Water is also part of that to understand data models for treatability of water. And we're also, I'm sitting on the governance committee for the DPI DARE NSN partnership on the Where's All the Water program. So having some great insights there through some of the work being done through researchers in this room. And there are plenty of other opportunities. We've definitely got lots of opportunities that we're also talking with Lucy and Willem about. So if you're interested, you're welcome to approach me about any further information. So thank you.